Everyone thought Krell was unbeatable, until a quiet human girl shattered his legacy in 15 minutes. Look, I will be completely honest with you. Before that day, before that absolutely catastrophic miscalculation that would haunt me for the rest of my academic career, I thought I was untouchable. My name is Krell, and I am, or rather was, one of the most decorated students at the Galactic Military Academy on Station Triumph. Valerians like myself. We are bred for excellence. Our crystalline neural structure processes tactical information 3 times faster than most species. Our muscular density allows us to bench press approximately 400 kilograms without breaking a sweat. We have been conquering star systems since before half the galaxy figured out fusion power. So yeah, maybe I had an ego. Maybe I strutted through those corridors like I owned the place. But here is the thing. I had earned that confidence through 17 consecutive simulation victories, top marks in strategic theory, and a recommendation letter from Commander Vex himself. The Galactic Military Academy is not some participation trophy institution where everyone gets a medal for showing up. This place chews up the weak and spits them out before midterms. We are talking about the premier combat training facility in 4 sectors, where the best of the best come to become the even better best. If that makes sense, every species you can think of sends their finest candidates here. Thalorian shock troopers with their 4 arms and battle rage, Kylexian pilots with their compound eyes that can track 17 targets simultaneously, Morvathian engineers who can rebuild a plasma cannon while being shot at. The Academy takes all of that raw talent and forges it into something truly terrifying. Then about 2 cycles into the semester she showed up. Maya Torres, human. From Earth, that little blue marble Deathworld tucked away in some unremarkable arm of the galaxy that nobody paid attention to until about 50 standard years ago. Now I had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. Humans were tough. Sure. They came from a planet that was apparently trying to kill them every single day, with weather patterns that could swing 40 degrees in an afternoon, predators that hunted in packs, and diseases that would make a Zarthan plague doctor weep. But stories are just stories, right? And Maya looked so unremarkable. She was maybe 1.7 meters tall, which is short by Valorian standard. Lean build, dark hair pulled back in something she called a ponytail, and these unsettlingly calm brown eyes that seemed to absorb everything without revealing a single thought behind them. She sat 3 rows behind me in advanced combat simulations, the crown jewel of the Academy's curriculum. This was not some basic hand-to-hand sparring class. This was full-scale tactical warfare, played out in neural-linked virtual environments where pain receptors were set to 70% real sensation, and your performance determined whether you graduated with honors or got assigned to some cargo hauler escort duty on the rim. I will admit, I barely noticed her for the first week. She did not speak much, did not raise her hand during tactical discussions, just sat there taking notes on an actual paper notebook like some kind of primitive. The other students, they gave her space, respectful space maybe, but definitely space. Deathworlders had a reputation after all, even if I personally thought most of it was exaggerated nonsense designed to make weaker species feel better about themselves. Then came the day Professor Thane announced free challenge simulations. This was it. This was my moment to cement my reputation even further. The rules were simple, gloriously simple. 2 students enter a randomly generated combat scenario. Last one standing wins. No weapons restrictions, no tactical limitations, just pure skill and survival instinct playing out in real time, while the rest of the class watched on the observation screens. I stood up, all 2.3 meters of Valorian pride and muscle, and I scanned the classroom for a worthy opponent. My eyes passed over the usual suspects. Tarvan, the Kylexian, who I had already beaten twice. Shira, the Thalorian, who was good but predictable. And then, just because the universe has a truly spectacular sense of humor, my gaze landed on Maya Torres. She was leaning back in her chair, arms crossed, with this expression that I can only describe as mildly entertained, like she was watching a slightly interesting documentary about paint drying. Something in my pride, that stupid Valorian pride, decided this was the perfect opportunity. You. I pointed directly at her. The human. How about we see if those Deathworld legends have any truth to them? Last one standing wins. The classroom went absolutely silent. Even Professor Thane stopped mid-sentence, his three eyes widening in what I now recognize as genuine concern. Maya did not move for exactly 4.7 seconds. I counted. Then slowly, deliberately, she smiled. Not a big smile, just this tiny quirk of her lips that somehow made my inner instincts scream danger in a language I had never learned to speak. "Sure, Krell." Her voice was casual, conversational, like I had just asked her if she wanted to grab lunch. "Last one standing. Sounds fun." And just like that, I had sealed my fate. The moment Maya accepted, the classroom exploded into chaos, and I mean that literally. Torvin knocked over his data pad. Shira's combat tentacles flared in what I now understand was a reflexive defense posture. Someone in the back, I think it was a Dralix named Fenner, actually started laughing, not a polite chuckle. Full-on gasping for air, slapping the desk kind of laughter. "Oh, this is going to be good," Fenor wheezed between fits. "Someone get recording privileges, I need to save this for posterity." Within 30 seconds, and I am not exaggerating, betting pools had formed. Actual currency was changing hands. The Kylexians were running odds at 15-1 against me, which honestly felt insulting. I was the top student, 15-1. That implied I had a chance of losing, which was ridiculous. Completely, utterly ridiculous. Except, and here is where my memory gets uncomfortable, several of the older students, the ones who had been at the academy for multiple cycles, were putting significant money on Maya. Not small bets, serious credits. The kind of money you do not throw away on a joke. Professor Thane cleared his throat, which sounded like gravel tumbling through a recycler. He was a Morvathian, built like a tank with skin that could probably deflect small arms fire, and he had survived actual combat in the Theta Sector conflicts. When he spoke, people generally listened. "Krell." His voice carried that tone. "You know the one. The tone that parents use right before they tell you that your brilliant plan is actually catastrophically stupid. Perhaps you would like to reconsider this challenge. There are other opponents who might provide a more, shall we say, educational experience." I waved him off. Literally waved, my hand like I was brushing away an annoying insect. "With respect, Professor, I think I can handle one human. I have trained for this my entire life." Thane's three eyes blinked in sequence, which was Morvathian for profound disappointment. "Very well. But do not say I did not warn you. The medical bay is on level 6, if you need it afterward." "If I need it?" The confidence I felt in that moment could have powered a small star cruiser. I spent the next 20 minutes preparing like I was going into an actual war zone. I reviewed my standard combat algorithms, ran through my tactical decision trees, did some dynamic stretching that made my crystalline neural pathways fire at peak efficiency. Other students were watching me, whispering to each other, and I assumed they were admiring my professionalism, my dedication, my absolute certainty of victory. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her chair, scrolling through her datapad, just casually reading something. She looked like she was checking messages from home. At one point she actually yawned. Yawned. Like this whole thing was barely worth staying awake for. "Not even going to warm up?" I called over to her, unable to resist the jab. She glanced up, smiled that same tiny smile, and shrugged. "I am good, but thanks for asking. The standard combat protocols for academy simulations are pretty straightforward. Neural link connects you to a virtual environment that feels 95% real. Pain receptors engaged at 70% to teach consequences without actual injury. Randomly generated terrain to prevent memorization advantages. Equipment loadout determined by a balanced algorithm. And most importantly, the simulation does not end until one participant is either unconscious, surrenders, or is eliminated by environmental factors. Professor Thane input the parameters, while the rest of the class moved to the observation deck. By now, word had spread. Students from other classes were filing in. Advanced tactics, xenobiology, even some of the engineering students who normally could not care less about combat simulations. The observation deck was packed, standing room only, and every single one of them wanted to watch the prestigious Krell fight the quiet human girl who barely spoke in class. The betting pools had grown exponentially. I heard numbers being thrown around that made my academic stipend look like pocket change. Maya stood up, stretched her arms over her head in a motion that seemed almost lazy, and walked toward the neural link station. She moved like someone heading to a routine medical checkup, relaxed, unhurried, unbothered. I, on the other hand, strode to my station with purpose, with confidence, with the absolute certainty that in approximately 15 minutes, everyone in this academy would know exactly why Valorians were considered elite warriors. The neural link helmets descended, the world faded, and the simulation loaded. My last thought before everything went sideways was how easy this was going to be. Spoiler alert. It was not easy. The simulation materialized around me in layers. First the ground, rough and uneven terrain covered in dark volcanic rock. Then the sky, a murky orange twilight that offered limited visibility. Then the scattered cover, massive stone pillars jutting from the ground like broken teeth. The environment algorithm had generated a close-quarters combat zone, which honestly worked in my favor. Valorian reflexes excel in tight spaces where split-second decisions determine survival. My equipment loadout appeared across my body. Standard issue energy rifle, 72 shots before reload, close combat blade, mono-molecular edge, personal shield generator, good for maybe 3 direct hits before it needed to cycle. Tactical visor overlay showing motion tracking and threat assessment. Everything I needed to end this quickly and efficiently. I dropped into a crouch behind the nearest pillar, exactly like the Academy manual suggested. Rule 1, never expose yourself unnecessarily. Rule 2, assess the battlefield before engagement. Rule 3, identify your opponent's position and exploit their weaknesses. The problem was, I could not find Maya. My visor scanned the arena. Nothing. No heat signature. No movement indicators. No tactical readout showing her position. For about 10 seconds, I actually wondered if there had been a glitch in the simulation. Maybe she had not loaded properly. Maybe her neural link had failed. Maybe I would win by default, which would be anticlimactic but still technically a victory. Then I heard her voice, calm and almost conversational, echoing across the arena from somewhere I could not pinpoint. You know, Krell, you stand like someone who has never actually been hunted before. My head snapped left, then right. Where was she? The acoustics in this terrain made it impossible to determine direction. My tactical training said to stay put, maintain cover, let her come to me. So that is exactly what I did. Big talk from someone hiding. I called back, keeping my rifle trained on the most likely approach vector. Why don't you show yourself and we can settle this properly? Her laughter drifted through the arena, not mocking laughter. Somehow that made it worse. It was genuine amusement, like I had said something adorable. Properly. Oh, Krell. There is nothing proper about survival. Then she moved. I caught the motion in my peripheral vision. Just a blur between 2 pillars about 40 meters to my right. Fast. Much faster than her frame suggested she should be capable of moving. I swung my rifle around and fired 3 shots. Textbook suppression burst designed to pin her down and limit her options. All 3 shots hit nothing but rock. She was already gone. My training kicked in. Repositioning protocol. I moved to a new pillar, keeping low, maintaining situational awareness. But here is the thing about textbook tactics. They work great when your opponent is also following the textbook. Maya was very clearly reading from a completely different manual, possibly one written by someone clinically insane. She hit me from above. Above? Who attacks from above in a ground combat simulation? I barely registered her presence before her boot connected with my shoulder, sending me sprawling. The pain receptors flared, 70% real sensation translating to a very real burst of agony. I rolled, came up firing, but she had already bounced off, using my own body as a springboard to launch herself to another position. "What are you doing?" I shouted, more confused than angry at this point. "Winning," she replied, and I finally spotted her, crouched atop one of the taller pillars like some kind of predatory bird. I adjusted my tactics. Fine. Unconventional opponent requires unconventional response. I activated my shield generator and charged her position, firing controlled bursts as I moved. Force her to commit, close the distance, end this in close combat where my superior strength would matter. She did not run. She did not take cover. She jumped. Straight at me. This was wrong. This violated every tactical principle I had ever learned. You do not jump toward enemy fire. You do not sacrifice high ground advantage. You do not turn yourself into a predictable trajectory target. Except she was not predictable at all. She twisted mid-air, contorting her body in ways that should not be anatomically possible, and my shots passed through empty space where she had been a fraction of a second earlier. She landed in a roll, came up inside my shield perimeter, and her blade was already moving. I blocked, barely. Our monomolecular edges met with a screech that made my teeth ache. We were face to face now, close enough that I could see her eyes, and that is when I realized something that made my blood run cold. She was not tired. Not even breathing hard. Meanwhile, I could feel my heart rate elevated, my crystalline neural pathways firing overtime trying to process her movement patterns, my muscles already beginning to burn from the exertion. "You are good," she said, conversationally, like we were discussing weather patterns. "Really good. By the book. Perfect form." She pushed forward. I pushed back. Valorian strength against human. There should be no contest. Except she was not trying to overpower me. She was redirecting. My own force worked against me as she twisted, used my momentum, and suddenly I was off balance. Her elbow hit my ribs. My shield flickered. Her knee found my stomach. My shield died. I staggered back, gasping, and raised my rifle. She was faster. Her hand snapped out, grabbed the barrel, and twisted it from my grip with a motion so smooth it looked choreographed. She tossed my own rifle aside and smiled. "Last one standing, right? You might want to think about sitting down now." That is when I understood, really, truly understood, that I had made a catastrophic error in judgment. This was not going to be easy. This was going to be a disaster. I backed away, trying to create distance, trying to reassess, trying to figure out how this had gone so wrong so quickly. My combat blade was still in my hand, which meant I still had a chance. Valorian close combat training is legendary. I had been practicing blade work since I was old enough to hold a training dummy. I could do this. I could still salvage this situation. Maya tilted her head, studying me like I was an interesting problem she was working through. Then she did something that made my tactical brain just stop functioning entirely. She smiled wider and said, "Okay, warm-up is over." Warm-up? That had been a warm-up? She came at me like a natural disaster given physical form. There is no other way to describe it. One moment she was standing there casual and relaxed. The next moment she was everywhere. High, low, left, right, feinting, striking, moving with a fluidity that defied every biological limitation I thought existed. My blade work, all those years of training, suddenly felt clumsy and slow. I was reacting, always reacting, never anticipating, never getting ahead of her rhythm. She ducked under my horizontal slash, swept my legs, and I went down hard. The impact sent pain shooting through my back. I rolled, came up swinging, but she had already moved. Her foot connected with my wrist. My blade went flying. Both our weapons were gone now, which should have been better for me. Valorian hand-to-hand combat was supposed to be superior. Supposed to be. She grabbed my arm, twisted, and I felt pressure points I did not even know I had light up like a star map. My arm went numb. She released, stepped back, and waited. "Come on, Krell. You are supposed to be the best, right? Show me what Valorian training looks like." The way she said it, there was no malice, no cruelty, just genuine curiosity mixed with something that might have been encouragement. Somehow that made it so much worse. I charged. Full commitment. All my remaining strength poured into a tackle that should have taken her off her feet and given me the advantage. I outweighed her by at least 40 kilograms. Basic physics was on my side. She sidestepped. Minimal movement. Maximum efficiency. Used my own momentum to guide me past her, added a push to my shoulder, and I crashed face first into a stone pillar. Stars exploded across my vision. The pain receptors were singing a very unpleasant song. I pushed myself up, tasted something that the simulation interpreted as blood, and turned to face her again. She had not moved, had not pressed her advantage, was just standing there waiting for me to recover. "Why are you not finishing this?" I gasped out, confusion mixing with the beginning edges of something I was not ready to call fear yet. "Because you challenged me to see who could stand last," she replied simply. "I am standing. You keep falling down, but you keep getting back up. That is admirable. Honestly, most species would have quit by now. Most species, not most students. Most species." Back on the observation deck, which I could not see but could somehow feel, I knew everyone was watching this systematic dismantling of everything I thought I knew about combat. The betting pools were probably getting very interesting right about now. The other students, the ones who had been at the academy longer, were probably nodding knowingly, and Professor Thane was probably updating his lecture notes with yet another example of why you do not underestimate Deathworlders. I tried a different approach. Used my superior reach to keep her at distance. Jabs, quick strikes, defensive footwork, make her come to me, tire her out, wait for an opening. It was a sound strategy, a smart strategy. It lasted approximately 15 seconds. Because here is what I was learning. What was being burned into my consciousness with every failed attempt to land a solid hit. Humans do not tire like other species. They are endurance predators, pursuit hunters. Their biology is designed for the long game. While I was breathing hard, while my muscles were starting to shake from exertion, while my crystalline neural structure was overheating from processing too much information too quickly, Maya looked like she was just getting started. She slipped inside my guard again. This time I was ready. I grabbed her, actually managed to get a grip, used my strength advantage to lift her off the ground. Victory. Finally, I could throw her, create distance, recover. She wrapped her legs around my arm, twisted her entire body, and suddenly I was the one being thrown. The ground rushed up, I hit hard, my vision blurred. Get up, get up, get up. I got up. She kicked me back down. I got up again. She swept my legs. I got up a third time, slower now, everything hurting. My pride in absolute ruins. You know what your problem is, Krell? Maya said, and her voice was not even strained, not even slightly out of breath. You fight like someone who has never lost before, like someone who has always had physical advantages. Strength, speed, tactical processing. You rely on being better than your opponent. She moved in close, not attacking, just talking. The psychological warfare aspect of this was devastating. Humans, we are almost never the strongest, almost never the fastest. We survive by being stubborn, by adapting, by refusing to quit even when every logical analysis says we should. She paused, and those calm brown eyes met mine. We survive by being absolutely, relentlessly, annoyingly persistent. I swung at her, a desperate haymaker with everything I had left. She caught my fist. Held it, not straining, not struggling. Just holding it in place like my full strength was a minor inconvenience. Last chance, Krell. Stay down. There is no shame in recognizing when you are outmatched. My pride, that stupid Valorian pride, made me try to pull free, try to keep fighting. She twisted my arm, applied pressure to 3 different joints simultaneously, and my legs gave out entirely. I fell to my knees, and I could not get back up. I knelt there in the volcanic dust of the simulation, every part of my body screaming, my crystalline neural pathways firing error messages like a corrupted data stream, and I realized something profound. I had not just lost a fight, I had lost an education in hubris. Maya stood over me, not gloating, not celebrating, just waiting, patient, like she had all the time in the universe. Do you yield? She asked, and her tone was almost gentle. Every fiber of my Valorian pride wanted to say no, wanted to find some reserve of strength, some tactical brilliance, some way to turn this around. But my body had already made the decision. My brain was too stubborn to accept. I could not stand, could not fight, could not do anything except kneel there and face the most humiliating truth of my academic career. I yield. The words tasted like ash, but I said them anyway. The simulation dissolved around us. The volcanic terrain faded. The orange sky disappeared. We were back in the neural link chamber, helmets retracting, fluorescent lights harsh and unforgiving after the dim arena. My legs were shaking. Actual physical shaking. The 70% pain receptors had translated to very real muscle fatigue and nervous system overload. I gripped the edge of the neural link station just to stay upright. Maya stepped out of her station, rolled her shoulders once, and looked completely fine. Not a hair out of place. Breathing normal. Like she had just finished a light jog instead of systematically dismantling the Academy's top combat student. The observation deck erupted. Not in cheers, not in boos. In absolute chaotic noise that defied classification. Some students were celebrating, probably the ones who had bet on Maya. Others sat in stunned silence. The Kylexians were frantically recalculating their betting algorithms. Fenner was laughing so hard he had fallen off his chair. And Shira, the Thalorian combat specialist who had survived 3 actual war zones, was staring at Maya with an expression that could only be described as profound respect mixed with healthy fear. Professor Thane descended from the observation deck, his heavy footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. He looked at me, then at Maya, then back at me. Krell, report to the medical wing. You are going to need neural pathway cooling and muscle regeneration therapy. But I am fine. I just need... I started to protest. That was not a suggestion. Thane's 3 eyes fixed on me with the kind of authority that ended arguments. You just pushed your system to critical levels. Medical wing. Now. I limped toward the exit, every step a reminder of my spectacular failure. As I passed Maya, she caught my arm. Not aggressive. Just a gentle touch. Hey! You fought well. Really. Most people would have stayed down after the 3rd knockdown. I did not know what to say to that. Thank you for thoroughly defeating me. Congratulations on exposing every weakness in my combat style. Instead, I just nodded and continued my walk of shame. The medical wing staff took one look at me and immediately started running diagnostics. Apparently, I had pushed my crystalline neural structure to 97% capacity, which was dangerously close to permanent damage. My muscle fibers had micro-tears in 17 different locations. My pride was going to need extensive reconstructive surgery. While I lay there getting treated, my datapad exploded with messages. The recording of the fight had already spread through the Academy network. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew Krell, the undefeated Valorian prodigy, had been taken apart by a human who barely seemed to be trying. But here is the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you are there, the only direction is up. And more importantly, you start seeing things clearly for the first time. Over the next few days, something shifted in the Academy. Not just with me, though I definitely changed. The entire dynamic around Maya transformed. Students who had been giving her respectful distance now gave her respectful attention. She started getting questions in tactical classes, real questions. People wanted to understand human combat philosophy, wanted to know how Deathworld survival translated to military application, wanted to learn from someone who approached warfare from a completely different evolutionary framework. I watched from the sidelines, still recovering, still processing, and slowly, carefully, I started to understand what Professor Thane had been trying to tell me. Combat is not about being the strongest, it is not about being the fastest. It is about adaptation, persistence, and the absolute refusal to quit even when logic says you should. Humans had spent millions of years being hunted by things bigger and stronger than them. They had survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and their own planet's apparent desire to kill them in creative ways. They had built that survival instinct into their very biology, and Maya Torres, that quiet girl with the paper notebook who barely spoke in class, carried all of that evolutionary history in her genes. 3 weeks later, I approached her after advanced combat simulations. My neural pathways had healed. My muscles had regenerated. My ego was still under construction, but at least the foundation was solid now. Maya, I owe you an apology. She looked up from her notebook surprised. For what? For underestimating you. For being arrogant. For thinking that my training made me superior to someone from a death world. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Would you be willing to train with me? Teach me some of those techniques? Her face lit up with a genuine smile. Absolutely. But fair warning, human combat training is less about fancy moves and more about being too stubborn to quit. I noticed, I said dryly, which made her laugh. We trained together after that. She taught me things the Academy manual never covered. How to fall properly and get back up faster. How to use an opponent's strength against them. How to push through fatigue when your body is screaming to stop, and most importantly, how to never ever assume you know someone's capabilities based on their appearance. The story spread beyond the Academy, became legend, got exaggerated in all the usual ways. By the time it reached outer stations, I was apparently unconscious for 3 days, and Maya had fought 12 opponents simultaneously. Neither was true, but I stopped correcting people after a while. Because the core truth remained. I had challenged a Deathworld girl in class, saying last one standing wins. And I never stood again. Well, not never. Obviously I stood eventually. Medical technology is quite advanced, but I never stood against her again. And honestly, that was probably the smartest tactical decision I ever made.